Hey there, my name is Nadi Hana, and I am super excited to be here with you today. And I have some super exciting stuff I want to talk about, and it's really about consciousness. I want to talk about how we're doing, as humans, as individuals on our journey, and somehow crop circles and sacred geometry are woven into our consciousness, and how we're showing up on the planet right now, which is a little questionable at this point in my mind. So I've got this whole presentation, and I want to show you how geometry and crop circles are woven together to support us, to support our consciousness, and how we can really tap into them and elevate, bring ourselves to our potential, because I don't know that we're there right now. We're definitely not there. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to talking about these two subjects, because it's a really big passion of mine. And it's really just about looking at the crop circles. I'm going to talk to you about their origins, who makes them, how they're made. We'll go all across the board, and I'm going to show you basically one of the ways that I experience the divine communicating with me, and I think it's communicating with others, right? We're talking about the universal language of math. So how do we connect with our divinity, with the divinity of, our own human potential? And there's a ton of different modalities to do that. There's a ton of different ways to connect and create our highest potential. But we're going to focus on geometry and crop circles, because that's where I've been drawn. I mean, my world, it's been an interesting journey. So should I say a little bit about that first? I think I'm not there yet. I think I want to just be in this general space, is because it's getting really interesting from my perspective. I think every event, everything that we hear about or see in mainstream media, I think is really encouraging and I want to say demanding. Actually, it's really calling forth our inner work, right? It's calling forth the higher purpose of why we came here. Boots on the ground, like, all right, let's get to work, At least that's how I've been interpreting and integrating it lately. And it's been tricky. I know a lot of us talk about, or we know not to watch the mainstream and mainstream media, and yet it's inescapable, right? It's in our face. Whether you're on some social platform, people are talking about it, and then you want to go look into a little bit, and it's just this saturation of pretty negative, kind of terrifying information. Things are presented in that way, and so it takes a lot of effort and intention to stay in the light, to remember that this is also a time of extraordinary transformation, individually and collectively. So that's what I mean when I say work, right? We've got to work to stay focused on the benevolence and the beauty that's here. And studying crop circles and geometry really helps me do that. When you start to look at the universal patterns, right, that the geometry is everywhere, there isn't anything that doesn't have a geometric pattern, it starts to break down the illusion of separation, right? You can't really talk about fighting each other without seeing through to that construct and knowing that there's another way. It's studying these universal patterns starts to invite connectivity, right? It starts to help us remember that we are all together in this, that, that we are all one, right? It's actually the geometric structure of that saying of we are all one, the principle of connectivity. So that's part of why I, study these things. I talk about them. I teach about these subjects, and I love finding the people that that get jazzed about this too. And so it brings things together in that kind of high vibrational way. And so focusing on that helps me navigate some of the density of this dimension. It's feeling pretty dense lately, and I don't know that we're on a light and fluffy trajectory or a timeline. And so holding the both, right? Holding the density, holding the light, and, getting inspired. And so these subjects inspire me. I want to start by showing some images and a PowerPoint that I have. And I want you to know who I am, right? I want you to know a little bit about how I ended up here sitting talking about these things, because I've known for a while that they're not normal and regular subjects, but increasingly over the years, I realize that I'm a fascinating outlier in my interests, right? And so I think my point is even though these tend to be non-mainstream subjects, I want to tie it together so that you can see how they are kind of mainstream, and that they help us navigate all the different levels of being here, of being human, of having this incarnation as human beings. So I'm going to try to stay on target. Apparently I have a lot of time, so I don't want to tangent off too far. But we'll get right into the slideshow, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I live here in Sedona, and I'm surrounded by a lovely community where I seem regular. And, we're all sort of drinking the Kool-Aid in terms of understanding that there's, so much more going on than the third dimension. But I lived a very mainstream, regular life for most of my life until about, I think, almost 15 years ago. I was a psychotherapist on an inpatient psychiatric unit for 10 years, which means that I was of service to people who were in all sorts of disorganized states. And I'm going to use the mental health terminology, right? Psychotic episodes, suicidal, having tried to commit suicide or contemplating it, and just the whole spectrum of non-consensus reality, right? Where mental health doesn't know what to do with it. They just diagnose and medicate and pathologize. And, it has a place, right? Mental health is of service, but I wanted to kind of go beyond reactionary healing, reactionary caretaking, to a holistic, aligned approach with, being who I was. I feel like I'm floating back into that time of my life, but I'm going to stay here. So I took a leap of faith from that time in my life, because it wasn't my full self. I was compartmentalized, and I wanted to move towards my alignment and more of my purpose here, right? I had done a tremendous amount of spiritual work. I was always working on myself. I always will be. But that work took me to the next level of consciousness, which was to welcome my true potential. And very shortly thereafter, I discovered unified physics and the work of Nassim Haramein and sacred geometry. And so I started diving in. I got a little bit obsessed. I took a class on how to draw it, and I started drawing compulsively. And these universal patterns, as you immerse yourself in these beautiful symmetries, in this harmonic proportion, you begin to entrain your system into that harmony. So it became my spiritual practice, and I was drawing a lot, and then I ended up having art shows, and then people wanted to learn about the geometry, so I started talking about it and teaching about it. And I share my journey in part to say that the geometry will just kind of take you, where way beyond where you thought you would ever go. And I like to hold the conversation and say, I'll go with you where, as far out as you want to go, because the geometry took me to crop circles, because the crop circles have a fundamental geometric structure. And so started with the geometry, made my way to crop circles, started asking, who makes them? That's the inevitable question. And then started going off planet, right? Started having encounters with three-dimensional beings that are multidimensional consciousness, and started understanding myself as a multidimensional being, as simultaneously existing here, as well as having other aspects that are in different star systems doing similar transition work, helping planetary consciousness to ascend, and really connecting with myself as a galactic citizen, and understanding the larger picture, understanding multidimensional consciousness, and learning about different star nations and star races and all of the benevolent support that is here helping us, and that communication is available in a lot of different ways, but in a very general way, that communication comes through crop circles, right? It's and the geometry, but there these patterns of, where is this intelligence coming from? Where are these divine patterns coming from? It begs the question of universal intelligence. Who is the architect? How did this beautiful infinite symmetry come to be? So started off really simple with a leap of faith and just being curious about sacred geometry, and ended up, knowing my family, my Arcturian family. I mean, all of them, you name it, we've got so much support. So I could go pretty far in terms of our star nations and our star systems that are here to support us, but I really want to get into the subject. Well, the PowerPoint, because we're all in the subject. But I want to add a piece that we've got star nations here, but we've got a bunch of ships, right? We've got here in Sedona, there are more ships than we could possibly register. Like I've heard at one point that if you could actually see all of the starships, that they would block out the sun, right? So there's this interest in us, and there's this interest in our success, and it's really time. This takes us back to boots on the ground. Here we go. We're not messing around anymore. So there's an amazing amount of support. The geometry, the crop circles, helps us remember. And that's my whole goal, right? It isn't just some frivolous, oh, these are cool patterns. It's big time work. Humanity is at a precipice. I mean, we have been for a while, but it's just coming down to it. And, by studying and remembering these patterns, we are bringing on our multidimensional selves. We are stepping into our true potential, and that's going to help us, survive at this point. So that's the point, right? I'm not a lighthearted, fluffy human. I take things pretty seriously. So I want to really get to the root of understanding the patterns, right? So we'll start with one of the most basic and beautiful patterns. This is the, I'm hoping that my beautiful phi ratio and my nautilus shell is up there, because we're going to start the conversation about geometry with the phi ratio. And this is just a universal pattern that we see everywhere. And I'm saying things that we all know. I'm not going to tell you anything revolutionary like, ooh, there's this underlying pattern. It's in our psyche, it's in our subconscious, and we call the process of awakening, we call it a remembering, right? The school of remembering. And so just bringing your awareness back to these fundamental patterns is going to, merge your consciousness with these infinities, right? These geometries, these finite structures that contain infinite potential. Right. So a lot of different shapes, but we're starting with the phi, and these are things that and it's the scale is infinitely large in terms of the cosmological, right? You've got galaxies, you've got universal patterns on that size, on that scale, and then it's down to the molecular of elements of ourselves where our DNA is made up of this beautiful harmonic geometry, right? It's us on a cellular level, which is why we resonate with it when we see it everywhere in the world, right? It's our cultural iconography, it's art, it's architecture, it's cosmology, it's music, it's quantum physics, it's astrophysics. It's everywhere. You will always come down to these shapes, right? So bringing our attention, right, that we are this geometry, that it is everywhere. It's created a new sense of beauty in my world, right? To appreciate the common ground, right? And that it's everywhere organically. We don't have to really think about it. And so I want to say a little bit about, the universality of it and the beauty of it and the kind of nonlinear imagery, but also there's a ton of mathematics and equations that are in this shape. So here we've got this communication, right? This is a crop circle. We're going to get right into the crop circles. I know there's some more math. I thought I was segueing into some math, but if we're talking about communicating with us in a very gentle, benign way, we could talk about how they have used geometric patterns, right? So they're speaking to this fundamental principle that is in our DNA, it's in the galaxies. And so using mathematics to speak to us seems super gentle, super effective if you want to pay attention, right? So I think that's the thing when I say it's a school of remembering, right? It's a school of just paying attention to what's hidden in plain sight. And crop circles are hidden in plain sight, right? They're every year in the summer months where there are fields, there are crops. And then there are crop circles. And let me see, do I want to oh my God, I just want to go into all the fascinating information about them, but I kind of want to stay on point with the geometry. So let's see. I think we're just going to segue a little bit into the crop circles just for a minute, and then we'll get back to the geometry. So I'll say straight up that I am of the absolute persuasion that these are messages from advanced civilizations that are here to help us evolve, right? They're here to help us, expand our consciousness. And I say that from personal experience. I got to go over there this summer, from anecdotal experience of just learning story after story, thousands of stories of people that have had life-changing transformation and contact experiences and healing experiences by being in crop circles. Kind of non-human technology that exists, like we're discovering that there are sonic frequencies that are left in genuine crop circles, which is like you'll walk into a crop circle and there's like an electrostatic charge, and there are the frequencies are like theta in nature, where if you were to do a binaural hemisync meditation, right, stepping into some of the genuine crop circles, actually the frequencies align the hemispheres of your brain just like a hemisync meditation would. And so that alignment creates an ability to contact your spirit, your higher self, other, civilizations, your future self, whatever. These are technologies to assist us, right? And I'm leaving this up, and I've got a bunch more because that technology, that advanced technology, is non-local, meaning you don't have to be in the formation, right? It can influence you across time. It knows how to work with our individual psyche. They know how to work with our collective psyche, and they are this like gentle, benevolent intervention. And so huge, you're never going to convince me that this isn't a presence of some sort of benevolent assistance, right? However, you've got to acknowledge they are also man-made. They are. There's been an effort to debunk them, and it's called the disinformation campaign, right? And it exists because they're so powerful. Like some of the information contained in these formations can lead to our liberation. right? Super, super powerful. So lots of effort to discredit them. And it's been really successful campaigns, to the point where you might be watching this going, I don't know if this is a bunch of, BS, or that people who are into this stuff are kind of ridiculed and marginalized as crazy, all of that world. So both exist, genuine and man-made. And then when I was over there this summer, England has over 82 military bases. There are covert and overt operations of military, both American and British. And so, you have to, if you want to believe in the relations between other civilizations and humanity, you've got to give some credence to the possibility of government involvement. In fact, the high possibility of government involvement. So staying grounded, right? Trying to stay grounded in the possibility of this phenomenon, while also simultaneously knowing so deeply within myself that these things aren't from here, and that they are a way to get home for me, right? I work with them, and I have profound sense of homecoming, and spontaneous tears, and different experiences that I know mean resonance with who I was before I was here. The other aspects of myself. Maybe I sent this to myself to help me remember, the other, the beyonds, and the more. So, okay, let's see. So, non-local technologies, we don't actually know who makes them. There's a lot of channeled information that says this is a federation of races, beings that come together to communicate with us this way, and lots of evidence for man-made. And man, there's so much cool information. I'm really trying to figure out where to go. That, we've got the geometry. Nope, I think we're going to stay here for a minute, but I don't know that this next slide is going to go where I want to go. So just a couple of details. Yeah, about the formations, right? The phenomenon's been going on since the 1990s. Long before that, but not in an organized way, right? It was really 1990 in a field called Alton Barnes, where we saw the first really organized pictograph, and people started, figuring out that something was going on. And so this is 33 years now of kind of a concentrated phenomenon where you've got some diehard fans that keep going to the fields, and that have had incredible experiences. So that's such an understatement. I want a better summary than that. But 33 years of documented evidence, and people having experiences, but also trying to document empirically, right? To collect data to try and make this a legitimate phenomenon, right? Because otherwise it's a little bit etheric and ineffable, right? Where does this phenomenon exist? We don't really know how to make sense of it. And I want to stay focused on kind of the...
Do you want to see it where you can actually see the next slide? I can switch it real quick if you want.
No, I think I'm tracking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure. If you want to see the other screen instead of this screen, I can actually change it for you.
I think I know where I'm at.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big claim,
Okay,
but
sounds good.
all right,
All right, just want to make sure you're good.
cool. So yeah, because that'll take us back to the geometry. So I'm going to just take a minute to talk about that formation, which is the geometry, right? This is the phi, right? This is the phi spiral, and we're going to go into the math in a minute, but this phenomenon since 1990, right? We started figuring out something was going on in the fields, and then we really kicked up the aerial, perspective, and we started flying over the fields a lot. So then in 1996, this formation appeared in the middle of the day, right? 6 o'clock p.m. Between 6 and 6:30. We had a pilot fly over, and there was nothing in the field, and then they flew back over about 25 minutes later, and this formation had spontaneously emerged. It looked like a cloud of fog, right? It looked like a mist that descended over the field. And the highway became a parking lot. And 15,000 people witnessed this formation appear, right across from Stonehenge, really trying to get the attention of, humans to say, wow, there's something going on here. And then speaking to us primarily, the genuine ones, in the language of geometry. So we would want to, the next slide would have some more information about the phi spiral and this geometry. So is that going to work? Yeah. So to break it down, to kind of bring it from the cosmic to, well, we don't have to bring it from the cosmic at all. It's cosmic and simultaneously human. And it is this perfect formation where space is dividing itself, or adding or subtracting space, right? Namely, this is an infinite pattern. It's a self-repeating pattern that will never end. And I've really gotten into this geometry like in a new way in the last year, because it helps us contemplate ourselves as infinite beings, right? We're not taught to do that. We are taught about, 4 elements and this 3D material realm. We're not encouraged to go to the, go into our full potential. And that means considering ourselves as infinite beings, as multidimensional beings. What I'm saying is this geometry can take you there. That's why they sent it to us in a crop circle, right? The math in this thing is so cool. I'm not a mathematician. You might have guessed that, although that's a stereotype. I'm way on the metaphysical side, but I have learned to love math through geometry and through this shape in particular, right? So it's this way that space divides itself. It's got this harmonic proportion. It's got, we're going to go into the math for a hot second to talk about the Fibonacci sequence, which is sort of the linear structural element of the phi. And then it's this curving, beautiful, infinite spiral of this, golden ratio. And it brings together the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It's unifying, and it's the only equation that doesn't require adding another integer into it. This is the only equation that either adds or subtracts on itself, and it creates this beautiful harmonic of relationship of time and space, so that we resonate with it because of our cellular structure and because it's outside of ourselves. It's part of the connection. There it is. So I've really come to, like I said, appreciate math through primarily the Fibonacci sequence, right? And what I mean by appreciate math is that I've learned to understand that God can be found in number sequences. Like, you can get to divine code through mathematics, which I would have just been terrified of even a couple years ago, right? So sacred geometry is, it's hopefully reparative of the geometry trauma, the math trauma that most of us have from our, teens and in high school. So the Fibonacci sequence is this really basic structure where the numbers are adding on each other. You can see 1 and 2 is 3, and 2 and 3 is 5, and 3 and 5 is 8, on and on and on to infinity, right? So it seems really basic. It is really basic, and yet it's also really outrageously complex. And this is what I mean with talking to God, because you cannot avoid the potential of a larger architecture, right? So here's what I mean. This is the Fibonacci sequence written, left to right, how we typically read patterns. So it's going to add, 8 and 13 is 21, 21 and 13 is, 34. On and on and on, right? So left to right. But then, as you can see with the diagram, you can also add the right-hand column down, and it's going to keep giving you that equation on and on and on to infinity, right? So that's the third column. We've got left to right, third column. Now, the first column also does that, right? 1 and 2 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5. Pretty cool. We've got right to left, down on the right column, down on the first column, and then the middle column. This is like, Sudoku isn't like really appropriate at all, but the mathematics of this is just inspiring, and it makes me understand a larger picture through geometry, through math, through this equation. And that's just cool. And anything I'm talking about in this, live stream is like so basic. And I know a lot of us know this stuff, but there's always the invitation to go a little further, because there's no end to the exploration. There's no end to the expansion, right? And that's part of the communication, right? Is, contemplate things beyond the material world, contemplate where these messages might be coming from, contemplate ourselves as the extraordinary beings we are, that math invites us beyond the linear. Even though it seems super linear, super rational, right? Math is a kind of a God code, right? I'm not making up anything new. I'm just sort of realizing these things as I talk about them. And so, we've got the geometry, geometry reparative, and I didn't really talk about the sacred piece specifically, but part of it is that it's all connected, right? And that is an inherent nature of sacredness, right? That we are infinite beings, that this incredible universe exists. That's all sacred and it's all geometric. So I kind of had said it, but I'm not saying it, but it's all good. It's all in here. And this is all kind of silly, right? Like, I'm throwing out a ton of information, in my opinion and my perspective, but the words don't actually matter. What is transmitted is the energetic, which is encoded in the geometry in the crop circles, right? Let's see where we went next time. So the phi is just everywhere, and it's found in so many circles, not just in like an obvious way where you're seeing the mathematic proportion, right? But then it gets like subtle, right? Where the towers are progressing in the phi ratio, right? In that harmonic where it has this like attention-getting geometry, right? It was a very attention-getting formation, but the mathematics, right? That's part of how you can tell if there's a genuine element to it, is the math checks out, right? I feel like, even though there's so much geometry, I want to talk, let me see, I'm going to have to probably skip a slide because I want to get into Metatron's cube and where you find it in the crops. But there's our dissertation on the phi ratio and this fundamental geometry and how you can find it in crop circles. And I want to talk for a minute, where did I go next? About, we're not going to do that one, about Metatron's cube, right? And how the geometry is woven into the fields in this way, right? We've got a 5D hypercube, we've got a 4D tesseract, we've got the Metatron's cube, and then what is Metatron's? Like, what is that even? What are we talking about? So I want to break it down a little bit. So Metatron's cube, and some of us are familiar with this. If you're watching this, you're probably familiar with Metatron's cube, but I like to make space for those who haven't had exposure to it and the brand newness of this fabulous geometry. I teach people how to draw this stuff. It's been over a decade that I've been teaching people how to draw it, and I'm just so lit up by it still, because this fundamental geometry encompasses or contains so much information. It's got these things called the platonic solids, right? It's related to the flower of life, and that you have to have the full expression of the flower of life from the seed of life. And then that gets us into these incredible fundamental shapes called, I think I just said it a second ago, but this is a cool progression of, figuring out how we get to Metatron's cube and the geometry that's complex and simple at the same time. So Metatron's cube, platonic solids, our light body, the Merkaba, the actual Archangel Metatron, like this thing is just loaded with incredibly expansive information. So just studying it will impact your consciousness, but drawing it is a really activating practice for how to bring yourself online. All the different elements of yourself, the geometric structure of yourself, the connection to the Akashic records. I'm not making this up. It's all in this shape. So it's a flower of life, Metatron's cube. This stuff can turn you on like nothing else. And it'll take you really far. Once you are studying with this and working with this or tattooing it on your body, you've just got to be prepared for the expansion, because it's inevitable. It's probably a faster pace than you're ready for. But again, this is the time. Like, we got to turn ourselves on. So if you're already on the tip of geometry, awesome, go team. And if you're just coming into it, put your seatbelt on, because this stuff is really powerful. So really quickly, like 2-second overview, and then go forth and prosper and look at this stuff more. You know, we've got the solids, and these are 5 shapes that adhere to 3 criteria, and they're the only 5 shapes that meet these 3 criteria. Although I'm pausing in my mind because I know that they're finding more shapes, and they're just super like hyperdimensional shapes. But we're going to focus on these for right now. They are really powerful because they represent the 5 elements, right? And so many of us were only told about 4 elements, right? Fire, air, earth, and water. And you can see how each solid represents an element. You know, you've got the tetrahedron, which represents the element of fire, and the octahedron, which represents the element of air. Somebody could do a freestyle on this. I'm not really that great at that. But we've got the cube, or the hexahedron, which represents the element of earth, and the icosahedron that represents the element of water. And we got those 4, right? We know the material world, but we didn't really get exposure to ether and the dodecahedron. And this shape is so powerful because when you start to connect with energy, right? Ether, energy, chi, prana, the invisibles, right? As soon as you connect to that life force, you get really powerful, which is part of why we weren't told about it, right? And so studying these 5 shapes, these 5 solids, brings all of those elements of yourself online. And it's not really so much of a conscious process, right? Like 10% of our waking reality is governed by our conscious mind, which is just a pathetic, statistic, which is tragic, actually. And so 90% of our waking reality is governed by our subconscious mind, and that is some thick programming, right? We got to get at that stuff. And the geometry speaks to us in archetype and symbolism. And so when we're working with it, we are bringing all of those elements online. We are, reclaiming much of what was lost. So connecting with the 5 elements, we're working with it, we're drawing it, our subconscious is coming online, getting really excited. And I think that I didn't mention why these, the 3 criteria. One is that all the faces on the shape are the same, so you've got tetrahedrons and then pentagons and cubes. And then all of the inner angles are the same, so 60 degrees, 90 degrees. That's a really tricky criteria. But then the third one is if you were to put the geometries in a sphere, they would touch equidistantly, right? So you get these 5, but then really they give the 6th, right? Like there's 5 solids, but then you bring the tetrahedrons together to form the star tetrahedron, right? So this is a lovely image about how the shapes fit into the cube. And we're just given the quick backstory here. We're actually just wanting to get to the star tetrahedron. This is another kind of encoded piece of information in Metatron's cube, right? Because that geometry, that star tetrahedron, those 2 tetrahedrons mix up, overlaying each other, create our Merkaba, right? This is the geometric pattern of us. If we were to ditch this spacesuit, we have this fundamental structure, and you can work with it. You can begin to access this time travel device, this is multidimensional consciousness, right? When you start to tap into the frequency, which is the geometry, which is the star tetrahedron, right? When we're talking about orbs, there's a lot of evidence where orbs are really just beings that are, you know how to use their tetrahedral structure, their Merkaba, to travel through space and show up as these spinning bright orbs of light in different planets and different star systems. And, that sounds like a great Friday night to just pop in and visit your galactic family on other planets and see what everybody's doing, check in on each other. And so, I can do this. So this kind of geometry shows up in the fields all over the place all the time. This one actually happened in 2 different phases, right? You got the main Merkaba, the main star tetrahedron, and then that inner grid piece showed up a few days later. So sometimes they're built like that, where you'll get them in phases. I don't know that I have a really cool one on this show. So the geometry coming to us, communicating our Merkaba, our light body, like speaking to us on such subliminal and subconscious realms, right? This beautiful three-dimensional star tetrahedron, right? This happened in 2017. It was just this precise geometry. And then another phenomenon about crop circles that I think really just seals the deal is that some of the formations show up again the next year, right? Because the technology that's used to make them can alter the crystalline structure of the soil, right? So that you have a phenomenon like this, where you've got the first year, but then the second year in the new field, it shows up again, and almost prettier in this different dimensional way. But the ghost formation element of the phenomenon is, I think it's a power pack punch, right? You got to look at that and you're like, oh God, what is going on? That is not ropes and boards. Like, let's study the soil there. Let's study the crop. And I, at this point, can't remember where else I go. But, you know, star tetrahedrons, vector equilibriums, just cube octahedron, so much information encoded. And what I mean by encoded is that we see the geometry, our subconscious recognizes our Merkaba, our light body. We are online, we're coming online just by looking at them. And that's just basic information, right? Like, there are star glyphs encoded in these things. There are properties, there's a technology that is designed to interface with our DNA and turn us on, right? Like, access that 90% junk DNA. There's that really terrible statistic again. Like, so much is offline, and these things are encoded. I should say these things are encoded with the technology that can bring us online, right? Like, photonic light emissions, right, that interface with our holofractal graphic, let me try that again, holofractal graphic DNA, right? Like, this is really advanced stuff, and I can hang out in the beginner stuff, but enough to say, like, whoa, there's some amazing intelligence in these things. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, cool. There's no right or wrong here. The geometries, the crop circles just invite contemplation, and they will match you and mirror you wherever you're at. So if you want to say, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit, those are man-made, cool, go for it. I'm going to be in the group of people that are like freaking out on them, knowing that there is so much more, going on there. And we're both in each camps, knowing what we think is true, right? Like, I gotta say, okay, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I know, and I'm pretty sure I'm good with suggesting and believing that there's seriously intelligent information in these things, mostly because of how I feel when I look at them. And I'm in good company, right? Like, Foster Gamble did the movie Thrive, right? They did the first one in 2010, and I feel really bad because I always forget his wife's name, and they are in it together. John, if you know that, Foster and Kimberly Gamble, right? So they did the first Thrive movie, and they did another one last year, I think, and he gave an animated version of this. Did I put it in here? I did, except, how do I play this? I don't know how to play it, but I want to add this into the mix. I can see the video there. Is it possible to play it?
I don't know if it will actually.
All right.
Will play.
That's okay. We don't have to do it.
You can give it a shot.
All right. Well, and basically we go into it like halfway through, because this is Foster Gamble talking about his belief in crop circles, which is the same. So I always like to back myself up. Can you start it at like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, or like 3 minutes about?
Where at?
Like about 2:30 or 2:45. Oh, yep. But is there a way to tell if we can hear it or not?
I'm checking right now.
Okay. I mean, we totally don't have to do it, but it's cool. So what do you think? Should we try, or should I just go on? Because it's either way is fine. You just sit and breathe.
Oh, great. Let me go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's too much. I can just say that.
Yeah, let's just go ahead.
Let's just go ahead,
Yeah,
because Foster.
you want me just to play it and they can just see it, or
No, it's fine. Basically, Foster did these incredible animations where he's saying, like, look, why are these things here now? You know, like they're trying to give us information for free energy and, you know, technology. There was a movie, Contact. That was one of the little clips that I had. And if you don't know Contact, it was a movie, I think, in the 90s with Jodie Foster. And it was the story of how the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the SETI program back in 1976, 73, 76, sent out a signal into space. They sent a radio signal. And the movie is about her searching for the response, right? And so she's believing that that we're going to get a message, and then finally we do, and it is in sonic code, right? We get radio signals, and then they decipher them and decode them, and they figure out that it's binary code, and it's organized in such a way to give us the blueprints for a time travel device. And it is analogous to what's going on. This is disclosure in media, right? Like, there's a bunch of people that have made the crop circles into 3D versions and renditions, and they create starships, right? And I'll show you a couple more coming in here. But the math, right? We've got the ratio of pi, right? 3.141. This formation, encompassing the mathematics of pi, right? So you've got the phi ratio, you've got pi, and then there's all sorts of evidence for different binary code communication. Where'd I go next? Right, but the geometry, fundamental, hexagonal patterns that represent hexagons and the building blocks of that geometry in our reality. And again, like infinitely spiraling geometries. I'm pointing out here, so I don't know if that's weird how to do that, because I see it out there, but whatever. All you have to do is look at them. That's it, right? Because they are subliminally powerful. And, a lot of, if we're talking about some being man-made, right, are they subliminally powerful nefariously, right? Like, you've got to breathe, you've got to use your intuition, and I think that's part of why they're here, is to help us build our intuition, build our connection to source, build our own awareness and inner knowing, and that way of interpreting the world and moving through the world then creates a different dimensional reality, right? One not based in like needing proof and empirical data and evidence and sort of rational linear progression, but one that knows experientially that, like, oh, I start crying when I see these things. I start having energetic responses, embodied responses, and that's a way that I know how to define reality in terms of what is meaningful, what is, vibrationally aligned, so to speak. And we create this new reality based on higher intelligence, based on intuitive knowing, based on the interconnectivity of geometry, right? And leading us to universal consciousness and unity consciousness, right? It's literally, I'm talking about how these things can create a sense of unity consciousness, can help us, God, survive at this point. We are fucked up. Things are not going well through one lens. And then if you look at it through these lenses, maybe it is going well. Maybe we are doing better than we think. And I'm just breaking into my own existential dilemma at this point, because it's been tricky to look around on this planet at humanity, and different wars breaking out, different agendas, different constructs being created, and to look at these things and realize that there are other constructs and there are other potentials. That there are, stories greater than humankind. And the geometry bridges that, right? Like, the constructs are limited to this dimension, but the geometry takes us beyond this dimension. Like that. Look at that, right? So basic hexagons, 6-sided geometry, and then complex geometries like this one. I usually sit in silence and just meditate with this one, because it's insanely powerful, and incredibly multidimensional. So multidimensional meaning that our consciousness is expanded to understanding ourselves as so much more, contemplating infinity, contemplating the complexity of, other dimensional potentials, right? Ourselves as these advanced psychic beings, right? Oh my God, we are so much more than what we've been told, just staring at them, printing them up, putting them all over your walls. I have an entire wall montage of these things, and I love to get people together and draw them. Like, it's really fun to draw, or you can sit and put binaural beats in a hemisync alignment and stare at them and really get some information. Like, I kind of go as far as you want to go. So reach out to me if you want to go far with the crop circles and see what they have to offer. I'm just following, like, I really could be talking about anything right now. The whole thing is just to look at them, because they have different frequencies, right? There's a woman, her name is Judith Moore, and she channels she channels an entity called Leolin, who is the keeper of the records of Ra. And we're talking about Ra, like the Seth material, the Ra material, RA, Egyptian consciousness accessing, Akashic consciousness accessing infinite wisdom and intelligence. Leolin, Judith Moore, talks about how these various geometries and various crop circles have star glyphs, right? And that the geometries in them bring frequencies of healing planetary waters, opening the frequency on the planet for the star kids to come through, right? Like helping them navigate the density, different codes to turn on our DNA. She receives direct information, about what they're here for, right? Just many, the hundreds of thousands of these exist, right? Hundreds every year, and thousands over the 30 years. And I like to sneak in all of the ones that hopefully blow your mind and help you contemplate that way more is going on here than a man-made phenomenon. So I think we just have a little bit longer. I'll just sneak in a couple more formations. But this one, if you don't know, this is the Milk Hill formation of 2001, 2010. I'm not sure, I always get the ones in here, but I'm just staring over there, and I know it looks weird on the camera. So 409 circles. 409 circles on a plateau field that happened like in a summer storm on the solstice when there's like 4 hours of darkness, and it just showed up. And each circle, so there's 409, and each circle, the lay of the crop rotates counterclockwise to the one next to it. Sorry. And that creates this like intricate clock. There's a word I'm looking for. A mechanism, right, that is alive and not just 2D, but 3D, and then blipping out of time and space also. And they tried to recreate like a tiny segment of this formation, which was 9 football fields wide. This thing is over 900 feet wide, and yards. It's really big. And they tried to recreate just a small section of it, and it took them 4 days with a lot of gear in broad daylight. Like, we've done everything we can to prove that these things are really phenomenal, which is just ridiculous that we have to prove them. Like, it gets a little bit annoying talking about who makes them, but I know it's an important conversation. But it's like, sometimes it seems so obvious, and sometimes I feel like I can see a perspective of like a higher civilization and consciousness, like an Arcturian consciousness, going like, giving these things to us for 30 years and being like, how do they not get this? Like, how these things are so obvious and so beautiful. Like, sorry we're so dense, but we're doing the best we can. And some of us are contemplating these as, communication from higher realms. And of course, there's tons of communication from higher realms. I've realized, oh, yeah, some of us like, so this one, this beautiful pentagon is like it's fractalizing pattern, right? If you want to talk about information, there's an artist, his name is Janosch, which is Janosh. And he had a box set and he calls it sacred geometry. And this has been around for a couple decades. And I was first drawn to it because it said sacred geometry. And then I love the colors. This is his card. He does all of this, not an oracle deck, but he has a bunch of cards of what I thought were just straight up geometry. Come to find out, as I was evolving on my own path and started understanding Arcturian, Sirian, Andromedan, Pleiadian, all of our star family, this deck is the geometry recreated from, interpreted from an Arcturian perspective. I am looking at this thing, it must look so weird. And he made this deck, right? So he has these beautiful art renditions of the geometries, all sorts of color therapy in there. And then in this box set, the reverse of the card has his interpretation, his channeled information from that formation. And then he also included in the set tracing paper. So the idea is that you meditate on the crop circle, you turn over the card, and you trace the code to activate the code within yourself. So tons of people in here we know what's going on. And I think I'll finish up because I think I don't know what time is anyway. So this is the one that I got to sit in. I got to sit in 5 of them this year. Did I just transition too hard and fast from that? Geometry, people know we're figuring it out. I don't know. But I went there, and I ended up even more in the mystery than I am now. Meaning I learned a bunch of stuff that affirmed my reality and also challenged my reality. And maybe some of this tonight does that for you as well. But this one, I showed up on the day this one was made, right? It's super aligned. And I've been studying this stuff for at least 10 years now, right? And so the collective anticipation, like my consciousness, the relationship of how the formations are made is like the genuine ones. There is a definite correlation of co-creation and collective consciousness contributing to the pattern formation, right? Like I think I have a couple that are a direct result of like a direct collaborative result of humans saying, I want to see this, and then having it show up the next day. So I went to England, definitely wanted to see a formation. This one happened the day I arrived the day this one was made, and then I got to sit in it the next day. And it was like a real phenomenon, right? It was like people with their crystal skulls, everybody meditating and having a good time. And then because I love the geometry and I love to draw them, I went back and recreated them. This one is based in the Flower of Life. You can get a 9-fold geometry from the Flower of Life. This is, if you want to talk about the secrets of life, right, studying the phenomenon, the numbers of 3, 6, and 9, right? So this is 3 rings of 9 circles that can be found in the Flower of Life, which is 6 geometries, and it's really, really cool. So I had some pretty powerful experiences that were really about, I tapped into a bliss state that sounds mathematic. I experienced a frequency in there that I associate with bliss, that I associate with like kind of pure ecstasy. And so to have that, in this realm, like to have some sort of 3-dimensional space holding of that phenomenon, of that feeling, was really, really powerful. I didn't know that that'd be possible. But I think that there's just a couple more crop circles showing you some of the geometry, finding the Flower of Life in the formations. And I can't imagine how strange it looks that I'm looking over here, but that's fine.
It's great.
Okay, great. Yeah.
It's not strange at all.
It looks strange to me in my mind.
It feels strange.
Yeah, it feels strange. Okay, so just going back, I think that I have a couple more slides because I just want you to look at them, right? This is a tesseract, right? This is an 8-fold geometry. Is that right? No, it's not right. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16. Is it a tesseract? I think it's an 8-fold, but it's, yeah, it's awesome. And so this was another one that had a ghost formation where it showed up the next year. And the idea being that if you stare at them, that they are assisting you. This is the hyperdimensional hyperdimensional decagon, right? This is a 5-fold geometry that ends up being a 10-fold decagon, and it's not a hypercube. It would be like a hyperdecagon, but can we go in there? Like I just want to get in in that shape, in that formation. And, all sorts of people who have gone into the formations have had contact. When I showed you the phi spiral, that first, the first crop circle that was in 1996 across from Stonehenge, a woman went and sat in the center one. Her name is Julia. Nope, that's not right. That was the Julia set. Her name is Patricia Corey. She went and sat in that center circle and started channeling Syrian consciousness. And she wrote a series of books, prophetic books from the Syrians. They were called Syrian Revelations. Really powerful pieces of information, bunch of powerful books. I highly recommend looking into them. It's endlessly fascinating. I just talk and talk and I'm super animated. All right, just a couple more. So this one, I had a kind of an awakening. I had a contact experience with a human being on this earth who is an incarnation and a living aspect of Thoth consciousness, right? I know there's a bunch of them, but this was a serious mathematician, very, very well-known, cool physicist who looked at me and was like, you need to know who you are. Somewhere there is an armada missing its commander. You've got to start to remember, right? And it was this absolute awakening, and his relationship with me and his the purpose of coming here and helping me turn on and activate, and it really blew me out. And that night I asked for some kind of sign, like, oh my God, what's going on? And I woke up with this geometry, this infinity geometry, like rotating, and moving in a way that you can't see because it's 2-dimensional. And I feel like I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is the sigil of my armada, right? The sigil of my fleet that I am a part of, that I am, what do I want to say? That I am in direct communication with. Like, I'm in contact with this Starfleet, and I need to get on board with that. Like, I need to receive and start, getting the information. And I don't know, I just threw that in there because it's a super cool infinity geometry. And, this is all asking us to use new brain muscles, right? To go, oh, okay, we're all part of a Starfleet. We've all agreed to be here right now. Ground crew, we've got some work to do, which kind of takes us back to where I started, which is we got to come online. Like it's really down to it. I mean, we would have said it was coming down to it like 10, 20 years ago, but stakes are a little higher, AKA what is that? Not genocide, mass extinction, right? Like we're just doing it in. We've overstayed our welcome. So we've got to be remembering, we've got to be using all of the information, all of the access codes to turn ourselves on. I know there's a ton of them. Studying the formations started bringing my light language on board, right? Like started helping me understand and communicate in different ways, right? And transmitting energy and bringing our telepathic powers online, right? Like we've got to assist each other in expansion. And that's part of what the formations do. And I mean, yeah, hard not to contemplate a higher level of intelligence when you see these things. And I think I've said everything I want to say. It's just, look at them, go look into it. If you're called, and it can be really powerful. You can have it can turn a little bit into like Richard Dreyfuss and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where you get a little bit obsessed and you don't really know why. But if that happens to you, just go into it. I want to encourage you to just enjoy the ride, draw them, meditate with them, receive them, right? Receive the intelligence, because it is your intelligence that's being turned on, right? I like to think that other aspects of ourselves are on the ship somewhere, and that they have participated in creating these formations so that we would remember and remember and connect with ourselves on the ships, right, in other star systems. That we've sent these messages to ourselves, and that when we get it, we start opening up those pathways of communication, astral travel, getting ourselves back on the ship, and connecting. I'll end with this one. I might not end with this one, but this one is a really great example of the collective, the co-creation, right? Because, and there are thousands of examples where people say, I want to see something, I want to see an image in a field on this day, and it happens. And so this crop circle was a response to a molecular biologist, molecular physicist, who wanted to see an image of magnetic propulsion, right? And like what kind of, what that would look like in terms of, manifesting on our planet using that technology. And so you've got the positive and the negative, the polarity, creating this frequency pattern, right? The manipulation of the gravitational field. And then in there, right, there's like kind of a little ship in there. There's like multifaceted communication in here. So take what you will. I find it fascinating, and endlessly fascinating. And I think I've talked so much, so I'm gonna wrap it up there. And I'll say, if you want to reach out, I do classes and calls about how to draw these things, how to receive the information, classes on drawing sacred geometry and bringing yourself into alignment to receive your higher information. Classes, calls, and experiences about light language and whales and dolphins and all of the different technologies that we have to bring ourselves online and wake up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and really appreciate you being on this planet, because all hands on deck. We all heard the call, and go team.